In the 1st century, when Antioch still breathed incense, blood, and fear beneath its marble streets, there lived a man whose name was spoken only in whispers, Malekos. At first, he was known as a quiet scholar, a man who read too much and slept too little, always staring at shadows as if they were speaking back to him. The city dismissed him as eccentric, harmless, broken in the mind. But Antioch was wrong. Very wrong. Each night, as oil lamps dimmed and doors were sealed, Malekos descended into the lower quarters of the city, where the air smelled of rot and old prayers. He carried with him no weapons, only scrolls written in ink darker than night, and a voice that trembled not with fear, but with anticipation. He believed Antioch was built on bones, and bones remember everything. At first, he only listened. He pressed his ear to the stones and whispered questions no sane man would ask. And slowly the stones answered. Not with words, but with sensations, cold crawling up his spine, pressure behind his eyes, a presence breathing where no breath should exist. Malekos smiled at this. He called it truth. He called it awakening. And from that moment on, Antioch was no longer a city to him, it was a mouth, and he intended to speak through it. Malekos began his rituals modestly, or so he told himself. A circle drawn in ash. A drop of blood. A name spoken once, then again until his tongue felt numb and his thoughts no longer belonged to him. He did not scream when the first spirit answered. He laughed. The sound echoed strangely, as if something else were laughing with him from beneath the floor. The spirit did not appear as a figure, nor as a voice, but as a pressure inside his skull, squeezing memories that were not his own into his mind. Cities burning. Children screaming. Gods dying alone. Malekos fell to his knees, overwhelmed, euphoric. He believed he had touched divine knowledge. He did not yet understand that divine knowledge does not beg to be summoned. From that night forward, he slept less, ate nothing, and spoke to people who were not there. Neighbors noticed his eyes changing, first always wide, never blinking, reflecting light like polished stone. He told them he had friends now. Old friends. Ancient friends. When people began to vanish near his dwelling, Antioch blamed thieves, sickness, coincidence. Malekos blamed hunger. The spirits were hungry. And hunger, he learned, could be negotiated if the offering screamed loud enough. By the 3rd month, Malekos no longer whispered. He chanted. His voice cracked and bled, but he continued, carving symbols into his skin when parchment was no longer enough. The spirits demanded permanence. They demanded proof. He gave it willingly. Each ritual peeled away something human from him: compassion, memory, restraint, until his thoughts moved in spirals instead of lines. Time ceased to exist properly. Nights bled into days. Faces blurred. Only the voices remained clear. They called him vessel, then door, and finally, home. Antioch felt colder wherever he walked. Animals refused to approach him. Children cried without knowing why. Malekos believed this was power. He believed madness was clarity misunderstood by the weak. When he walked through the market, he muttered prophecies that made no sense until days later, when disease spread or fires broke out exactly where he had pointed. Fear followed him like a shadow that did not obey the sun. And still, the spirits were not satisfied. They wanted more space, more sound, more blood. They told him the city was too loud, too alive. Antioch, they said, needed to listen. The basement beneath Malekos' dwelling became something else entirely. The walls wept black moisture. The air vibrated even when no sound was made. Symbols carved into stone pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Those who entered described the sensation of being watched from inside their own bodies. Malekos called it the womb. He invited people there under false promises: healing, knowledge, protection. Some came willingly. Others never knew they had been chosen. Screams did not travel far in Antioch's lower quarters. And even when they did, no one listened for long. The rituals grew elaborate, obsessive. Malekos repeated phrases over and over, losing track of their meaning but terrified to stop. He feared silence more than death. Silence meant the spirits were listening too closely. His mind fractured gently, then violently. He argued with himself aloud. He wept without emotion. He smiled while trembling uncontrollably. Still, the spirits praised him. They told him he was becoming necessary, indispensable, eternal. That word made him shudder with joy. He no longer remembered his own childhood, but he remembered every scream. Antioch was learning to listen. Soon, the city responded. Plagues rose without reason. People dreamed the same dream of a man with hollow eyes standing beneath the streets, chanting in a language older than thought. Priests attempted blessings. Soldiers attempted arrests. None returned unchanged. Some spoke of darkness that moved independently of light. Others refused to speak at all, their tongues stiff, their eyes glassy. Malekos heard all of it through the voices. He felt Antioch weakening, thinning, becoming permeable. His laughter returned, higher now, unstable. He scratched symbols into walls, into doors, into his own face. Pain meant nothing. Pain was just noise. He no longer slept. He no longer ate. His body survived on something else. Something whispered into his bones. The spirits told him the final ritual was near. That Antioch itself would become the circle. That every soul would be part of the offering. Malekos tried to remember if this frightened him. He could not. Fear required a self, and his self was leaking away. On the final night, the city felt wrong. Lamps flickered without wind. Dogs howled until their throats bled. Malekos stood in the basement, arms raised, voice splitting into multiple tones that did not belong to one throat. The walls shook. The ground answered. Antioch screamed not with mouths, but with foundations. The spirits poured through him, not as entities, but as intention. He felt himself stretch, thin, expand. His thoughts unraveled into static. He was no longer Malekos. He was function. He was passage. He was the sound between heartbeats. And yet something resisted. A fragment of him, small and terrified, realized too late that the spirits had never needed him. They only needed a whole. The ritual completed itself. The silence afterward was unbearable. When the soldiers finally descended beneath Antioch, they did so with torches shaking in their hands, not from the cold, but from a fear they refused to name. They expected to find a body. A corpse. A sorcerer broken and bleeding on the stone. But there was nothing so simple waiting for them. No Malekos. No flesh. No bones. Only the basement, hollow and silent in a way that pressed painfully against the ears. The walls were burned with symbols, carved so deep into the stone that even iron tools shattered against them. The air felt thick, as though something invisible occupied the space where a man should have been. Some soldiers swore they heard breathing that did not match their own. Others felt fingers brush the inside of their skulls, turning thoughts slowly, deliberately. One man dropped his torch and screamed that the floor was whispering his name. They fled soon after, leaving the basement untouched, sealed, avoided. Antioch tried to forget. Streets reopened. Markets returned. But something fundamental had shifted. The city had learned fear not as an event, but as a condition. People avoided that quarter instinctively, even children who had never been told why. At night, footsteps echoed where no one walked. Sometimes laughter rose softly from beneath the stones, broken, unfinished, repeating the same fractured syllables. Malekos was gone, yes, but the city understood the truth too late. He had not died. He had dissolved. He had spread. Antioch had not survived him. It had absorbed him. Centuries passed. Empires rose and collapsed like shallow breaths. Antioch changed names, rulers, religions, but the ground beneath it remembered everything. Earthquakes eventually tore open parts of the ancient city, exposing ruins no one could explain. Scholars descended with calm voices and careful hands, convinced knowledge could be separated from danger. They found carvings beneath layers of dust and broken stone symbols identical to those described in forbidden fragments of early texts. But these symbols were wrong. They did not behave like language. The longer one stared, the more they seemed to rearrange themselves, subtly shifting at the edge of perception. Some scholars complained of headaches. Others reported hearing distant chanting while working alone. Notes became erratic. Sleep vanished. One man wrote the same sentence over and over in his journal: "This is not history. This is a door." The academics argued, debated, dismissed early warnings as superstition. They claimed madness, exhaustion, coincidence. But Antioch had heard such words before. One by one, the researchers abandoned the site. A few vanished entirely. Those who returned spoke carefully, as if afraid of certain sounds. They described dreams of stone corridors breathing, of voices reciting rituals without end, of a presence that did not threaten but waited. The carvings were eventually sealed again, labeled an anomaly, a curiosity. But sealing something does not undo it. The symbols were not messages left behind. They were instructions still executing themselves, slowly, patiently, requiring only attention to continue. Those who encountered the ruins later, workers, looters, wanderers, reported the same symptoms with unsettling consistency. First came sleeplessness. Then the whispers, faint at first, indistinguishable from memory or imagination. Soon followed the dreams. Always the same. A city beneath the city. A man without a face chanting endlessly, his voice splitting, overlapping, folding back on itself. Victims described feeling watched not from the outside, but from within their own thoughts. Some began speaking aloud without realizing it, repeating fragments of ancient phrases that linguists could not trace. Doctors called it psychosis. Priests called it possession. Antioch called it misfortune. But the pattern was undeniable. The more attention the ruins received, the stronger the symptoms became. One archivist obsessively copied the symbols for weeks, claiming he needed to finish the circle. When found, he had carved them into his own arms, smiling peacefully. History, it seemed, had not buried Malekos. It had preserved him perfectly, not as a man, but as a process. He existed now as repetition, as influence, as a fracture that widened each time it was examined. The voices never identified themselves. They never demanded worship. They only encouraged continuation. And continuation, history had learned too late, was their true form of survival. Even now, beneath the modern city, something listens. Not patiently. Not eagerly. Simply attentively. It listens for minds that linger too long, for voices cracked enough to echo properly. It does not call out loudly. It does not need to. It knows curiosity always descends eventually. Somewhere below Antioch's foundations, the symbols remain intact, humming faintly with remembered intention. The city walks above them unaware that it stands upon a mouth held closed by fragile stone. Sometimes, late at night, people wake suddenly with a phrase on their lips they do not recognize. Sometimes, cracks appear in walls where no pressure exists. Sometimes, laughter rises softly from the ground, unfinished, unstable, almost human. Malekos is no longer a name. He is no longer a memory. He is a method. And methods do not die. They wait. They repeat. They adapt. Antioch learned to listen once. It may learn again. And when it does, the city will remember what it means to speak through stone.